It's my writing time slash live draw. I'm kind of doing a combo for reasons. Anyway, so I wanted to talk to you a little about villains for a minute, since I promised y'all that's what I was going to talk about on the drawing time. So at some point during the course of that, what I'll do is there'll be a small little intermission, and then what'll happen is I'll set the camera up and go ahead and transition it over to the drawing. So anyway, just want to talk about villains real quick. If you like what you see, do me a favor, please go ahead and like, comment, subscribe. I'd greatly appreciate that. Anyway, so here is the stuff about writing villains. Couple of things. First things first, when you write a villain, you always want to make sure to give them motivation, because motivation is pretty pivotal in how a villain works. Why is a villain a villain? And sometimes that can be as easy as he's a villain because the hero may have done something to him, whether he knew about it or not, that caused him to lose face or caused an accident or something like that. You know, like you look at, for example, the Joker. When the Joker was created, one of the origin stories, and he's had a few, one of the origin stories was that, Batman was chasing him as the Red Hood. Batman didn't know who he was yet, but then, through the process of trying to even save his life when he went over the side of a bridge, he ended up falling into a vat of chemicals. When he did, that vat of chemicals began to change him, and the craziness that was already kind of going on ended up being magnified, and so that's what created the Joker. So Batman unintentionally created his villain. And so the Joker always felt like there was a tie between the two. There was something that bonded them. And so, you look at Lex Luthor. You look at why was Lex Luthor such a powerful villain for Superman? Because he was, and that's coming to the second point, which is the antithesis of, and what an antithesis is in this case is just an opposite. Superman tends to deal with his issues head on. He tends to go in and break down the wall. He tends to go in and bust out a building. He tends to do the different things and fight the big fights in the middle of Metropolis and all this other stuff. Lex Luthor is very calculating. He's very methodical. He has a plan sometimes 4 moves ahead. And so there was a point even where Lex Luthor, and I believe he still is, like in an armored suit where he's pretending to be the Superman that Metropolis needs. And so, but he's smarter than a lot of people would think Superman is, because Superman just tends to kind of do his own thing and hit and smash and everything else. Anyway, so the second thing really comes back to, the first thing is give your villain motivation. The second thing is make your villain kind of a counter to your hero. If your hero is always kind of brave and chivalrous, but he's not really admired by the public, then maybe make your villain someone who's really admired by the public, but he's not always that brave. So you create the opposite. The next thing you want to do when you create a villain is you have the villain be someone that could be tied to the hero. You look at, for example, the movie Unbreakable. When they created Mr. Glass, Mr. Glass made a very interesting statement at near the end of the movie. If you haven't seen Unbreakable, I'd highly recommend it for several reasons. It's a really good superhero movie, one of the few M. Night Shyamalan movies I actually like. But anyway, you can always find that sometimes the villain is tied really close to the hero at the beginning of the story. And at some point something happens and he becomes the villain because of that. It's kind of like the Joker, but the villain slowly becomes the villain. It's not that the hero necessarily did anything to him, it's just he's connected to the hero. And, they may have been friends. You look at Eddie Brock and Spider-Man and Peter Parker. You look at, Mr. Glass and I can't think of the other guy's name, the main character's name from Unbreakable. But you think about relationships where, Lex Luthor, one of the origins was even tied to Superman before he became Lex Luthor. And then you look at Smallville, it's the same way. Lex and Clark were good friends, not knowing that they were going to go down different paths. So, and the fourth thing I want to stress when you write a villain is you always want to make sure that your villain doesn't think he's a villain. You want your villain to be somebody who feels like the hero in the story in their own mind. They think they're the hero, but they're not. And so this is kind of how that setup works. And so you want to make sure to have that character. You think of like a David Xanatos from Gargoyles, which has been a series I've been rewatching again. And it's really awesome because David Xanatos' whole thing is he feels like he has the right to be who he is. And he doesn't see himself as a villain, even when he's doing very villainous things to the gargoyles, to the city of New York, to the different people around him. His the reasons he does things is just because he can. In a lot of cases, sometimes it's because he's bored. And so, those are things you want to think about when you're creating villains. And there are some other things because next week's what I'm going to work toward is, kind of breaking out more of what the different types of antagonists, because all your antagonists in stories aren't necessarily, quote, villains. Sometimes the antagonist can be situations. Sometimes the antagonist can be just as right as the protagonist for whatever reason. You have certain movies, for example, where, say, you're dealing with an environmental situation, and the antagonist isn't necessarily literally trying to destroy the earth, but they have stuff that protects them. And so the heroes try to figure out how to stop them from doing what they're doing. The bad guys have everything they need to keep doing what they're doing. They're not necessarily going, oh, we're trying to destroy the world. They're just looking at the bottom line. Sometimes they feel like they're just trying to save money. So, it's just things we're going into for that. But anyway, guys, what'll probably happen, and I started this off saying we're going to go into 2 videos. What I'm probably going to do is cut this one, intro the next one, and then go ahead and bring in the live draw aspect. Okay, so anyway, guys, we're going to go ahead and get out of this. Thank you so much for those who've jumped in, those who watch, listen, comment. I'd like to hear from you. See what you think. Are you writing anything? Are you creating anything? Are you working on something? By the way, guys, in this video, when I get a chance to update everything, I'm going to have the link to the Starting Over podcast I was on that was uploaded, I believe, Friday or Saturday of last week. So I was on that. Cool show. I'll talk a little bit more about it during the live draw. Anyway, guys, take care. Love you guys, as always. I've got a story to tell. I pray it inspires you to tell yours, and more importantly, be blessed and be a blessing to somebody, guys.